Hey there movie lovers, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're suiting up and blasting back to 2008 with the film that launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man. What began as a gamble for a brand new studio turned into a global phenomenon, transforming Robert Downey Jr. into a superstar and changing superhero movies forever. But while fans remember the one-liners and the explosive action, there's a treasure trove of fascinating stories hidden behind the armour. So power up your arc reactor, grab a cheeseburger, and let's suit up for 20 things you never knew about Iron Man. Although Iron Man became the first hero to launch Marvel Studios' shared universe, the character had spent years in development at several studios. During the 1990s, Fox held the rights before they passed to New Line Cinema in 2000. However, New Line boss Bob Shaye doubted the concept, questioning how a man in a heavy metal suit could fly and expressing concerns about the film's commercial appeal. Believing they could do a better job themselves, Marvel allowed New Line's option to expire in 2005 and began developing what would become Iron Man. One of Marvel's main reasons for launching its own studio was to sell merchandise, particularly toys. The original plan was to begin with Captain America, but after regaining the rights to Iron Man and Hulk, Marvel decided to let children choose. Young focus groups were introduced to the heroes and their powers, and Iron Man came out on top. As a result, Tony Stark became the first star of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Director Jon Favreau pushed hard to cast Robert Downey Jr., believing the actor's personal struggles made him uniquely suited to play Tony Stark. He felt Downey's experiences had given him a depth that went beyond the typical comic book hero. Favreau also believed Downey could make Stark both arrogant and likeable, while delivering a genuine emotional journey that would win audiences over. Despite concerns over insuring him, Marvel gave the actor a screen test. Determined to land the role, Downey arrived dressed like Tony Stark himself, wearing a tuxedo. The audition convinced Marvel executives and he signed on. Because the actor was considered a risky choice at the time, Favreau kept Sam Rockwell in mind as a backup. Rockwell later revealed that he had discussed screen testing for the role, but after Downey secured the part, he returned to the franchise as Justin Hammer in Iron Man 2. According to Jon Favreau, the original plan was for the Mandarin to serve as the overarching villain of a trilogy, with Obadiah Stane's betrayal saved for the second film. Reimagined as an Indonesian terrorist, the Mandarin was intended to fill a role similar to Thanos later in the MCU. Favreau compared the character to Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars, with another villain acting as the more immediate threat. He even announced the Mandarin as the villain at Comic-Con. Iron Man helped establish the light-hearted tone that would become a Marvel trademark, and much of that comes from improvisation on set. Robert Downey Jr. often injected humour into scenes, with Jon Favreau encouraging the approach. Jeff Bridges later revealed that the script was never completely finished, leading him, Downey and Favreau to rehearse scenes through improvisation before filming. Initially uncomfortable with the process, Bridges eventually embraced it, describing the experience as making a $200 million student film, where everyone was free to experiment. In the end, he felt the approach worked brilliantly. Although Kevin Feige had ambitious plans for a connected universe, even he wasn't certain audiences would embrace the idea. To avoid distracting viewers, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury was saved for a post-credit scene rather than appearing during the main story. Feige later explained that the scene was intended as a subtle nod for dedicated fans, but the reaction exceeded expectations. Within days, media outlets were already discussing Nick Fury and the possibility of a larger shared universe. Iron Man is packed with hidden references. Rhodey's ringtone uses the theme from the 1966 Marvel Superheroes cartoon, while the Ten Rings organization that kidnaps Tony Stark is linked to the Mandarin. A billboard can be seen with a reference to Fin Fang Foom. The Roxxon Corporation logo appears on a truck Iron Man smashes through, and its name is on a building in the background. And of course, Stan Lee makes his cameo as a Hugh Hefner lookalike. Pepper Potts' computer files include references to The Big Lebowski starring Jeff Bridges, and some of the code shown on screen is actually software used to download firmware to Lego RCX robots. Rapper Ghostface Killer, a lifelong Iron Man fan who has used the aliases Iron Man and Tony Starks, filmed a brief appearance, but it was ultimately cut from the finished movie. When Pepper Potts finds Tony Stark removing his damaged armour, Captain America's shield can be seen partially assembled on a workbench in the background. This Easter egg was originally added as a joke by a visual effects artist, but Jon Favreau liked it so much that he kept it in the film. Although the scene appeared in several trailers, the shield itself was digitally removed to avoid giving away the surprise. Tony Stark's computer assistant, Jarvis, stands for Just a Rather Very Intelligent System. The name pays tribute to Edwin Jarvis, Tony Stark's loyal butler from the comics. Marvel chose to reinvent Jarvis as an AI to avoid comparisons with Alfred Pennyworth, Bruce Wayne's famous butler from the Batman universe. Paul Bettany only voiced Jarvis as a favour to Jon Favreau, whom he had previously worked with on Wimbledon. Recording all of his dialogue took just 2 hours, and Bettany later admitted he barely knew what kind of film he was working on. He has also revealed that he has never actually watched Iron Man and remains unfamiliar with much of the plot, despite later becoming one of the MCU's most important characters as Vision. Long before Jon Favreau came aboard, Quentin Tarantino was approached to write and direct an early version of Iron Man, while Fox still held the rights. But Fox decided it already had too many Marvel projects in development and passed on the film. Other filmmakers also came close. Joss Whedon entered negotiations in 2001, while Nick Cassavetes was hired in 2004 for another version that was never made. Way before Robert Downey Jr. was cast, several actors were linked to play Tony Stark. Tom Cruise showed interest when the project was at New Line, while Nicolas Cage was also considered. Once Marvel regained the character, Patrick Dempsey and Colin Farrell entered the conversation, but Jon Favreau remained focused on Downey. The cave where Tony Stark is held captive was built as a massive set, measuring around 150 to 200 yards long. It featured movable sections to give the crew greater flexibility while filming. Production designer J. Michael Reaver also had air conditioning installed after learning that real caves in remote areas are often surprisingly cold. When designing Tony Stark's Malibu home, the filmmakers were instructed to make it feel more like the workshop of an inventor than something overly futuristic. Michael Reaver drew inspiration from the photography of Julius Shulman, whose images of Los Angeles homes from the 1950s and 60s helped shape the mansion's distinctive look. To bring Ironmonger to life, Stan Winston Studios built a huge animatronic puppet, rather than relying entirely on CGI. The suit stood around 10 feet tall, weighed roughly 800 pounds, and was mounted on gimbals to stimulate movement. Operating the giant machine required a team of 5 puppeteers working together. At the end of the film, Agent Coulson presents Tony Stark with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s cover story that Iron Man is merely Stark's bodyguard. Tony quickly dismisses the explanation as pretty flimsy. Comic book readers may have recognised the reference, as that was the exact story Tony Stark used for decades to hide his secret identity. He maintained the deception until 2002, when the comics revealed to the world that he was in fact Iron Man. Audi's partnership with Marvel began with Iron Man, and originally included a bigger role for the Audi R8 during the final battle. The plan called for Tony Stark to crash the car into Ironmonger, causing it to flip before Iron Man bursts out by splitting the roof in half. However, the R8 proved too well built. The stunt team couldn't get the car to flip properly, and the roof refused to break as intended, forcing the sequence to be abandoned and the car's roll to be scaled back. Security around Marvel productions is much tighter today, but that wasn't the case during Iron Man. A photographer, Ronnie Adams, managed to get a snap of the witty hero during production and leaked it online. Rather than ignore it, Marvel embraced the leak. The same photograph was later used on the front page of the newspaper Tony Stark reads before his final press conference, ironically leading the photographer to file a lawsuit over its use. It was then changed in home video releases to a different photo. Before filming began, several versions of the script were explored. One draft even revealed that Tony Stark had invented Dr. Octopus's mechanical tentacles seen in Spider-Man 2. However, with Sony controlling the Spider-Man rights, the idea was never seriously considered. Also, an alternate version of the post-credit scene featured Nick Fury making references to mutants and people being bitten by spiders, teasing the existence of the X-Men and Spider-Man. However, the dialogue was abandoned because, again, Marvel Studios did not own the rights to the characters, making the references impossible to follow up on. Tony Stark and James Rhodes are both graduates of MIT. During the sequence in which Rhodes calls Iron Man while he is flying alongside the F-22 fighter jets, a large gold ring can be seen on the hand holding the phone. With attention to detail in mind, the ring is MIT's famous class ring, affectionately known as the Brass Rat. Introduced in 1929, each graduating class receives its own unique design, making it one of the university's most cherished traditions. Despite Marvel's hopes of turning Iron Man into a merchandising powerhouse, toy companies initially had little faith in the character. Some executives admitted they could barely persuade manufacturers to take on Iron Man products before the film's release. Marvel even tied toy deals for Spider-Man 3 to Iron Man merchandise, but interest remained low. After the film became a hit, however, companies were more than happy to stock Tony Stark action figures ahead of Iron Man 2. Marvel originally viewed Iron Man as a way to promote its characters and boost merchandise sales, rather than as a major box office success. Early predictions suggested the film might earn around $100 million domestically. However, strong trailers generated huge excitement, and the film nearly reached that figure during its opening weekend alone. By the end of its run, Iron Man had earned $585 million worldwide. The success was so great that Marvel Studios president David Maisel rewarded Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau with a Bentley and a Mercedes. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about Iron Man. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.